Hi, I'm Tom Bajoras. I'm the husband of Lisa Yen, and my net story starts at the beginning of 2015. You've probably heard that NET is a marathon, not a sprint, but in my case, it definitely started with a sprint. I don't have time to talk about everything in detail because I want to focus on PRRT today. But just to summarize, in January 2015, I was suddenly hospitalized with internal bleeding caused by a neuroendocrine tumor on my pancreas, which had metastasized to the spleen and liver. I had major surgery to remove half my pancreas, my spleen, my gallbladder, and large portions of my liver. Unfortunately, MRI scans done at 3-month intervals after my surgery showed that the disease was progressing despite monthly lanreotide injections. In April 2015, I was able to get a gallium-68 scan as part of a clinical trial. It hadn't been approved by the FDA yet, but the scans showed that my NET was somatostatin positive, which could make me a candidate for PRRT. But at this point, the tumors were only in my liver, and they were all accessible to radiofrequency ablation, or RFA. So I had RFA. But the next MRI after that showed progression, and RFA was no longer an option because there were just too many tumors and they were too small. So the next conversation was with my oncologist to consider capecitabine temozolomide, CAPTEM, versus PRRT. Fortunately, at that time, I was able to get a second gallium scan a year after the previous one. And the scan showed areas of intense dotatate uptake in the liver, as well as numerous areas in the bones. Now, this sounded like bad news, of course. You're being told that you have cancer all over your bones. But the nuclear medicine doctor who had interpreted the scan actually was genuinely excited about it because he said, "You have such high dotatate uptake, you're a very good candidate for PRRT." Of course, at that time, PRRT had not yet been FDA approved, so I had two options. One was go to Europe, and the other option was to go to Houston, where Excel Diagnostics was offering it under the Texas Right to Try law. I chose to go to Texas, mainly because it was a lot easier than going to Europe. I also happen to really like barbecue. So over the course of 2016, I received 4 cycles of PRRT in Houston. The treatment itself is not very exciting. Actually, it's kind of boring. You sit in a big chair for 4 hours with an IV. And then afterward, I experienced flu-like symptoms for 7 to 10 days. Just kind of aches and nausea and dizziness and a lot of fatigue. Just generally feeling pretty awful. But fortunately, I didn't have any serious side effects other than just a mild temporary drop in my white blood cell count. Then, in January 2017, almost exactly 2 years after my diagnosis, my MRI and gallium scans both showed no evidence of disease. So, with any NET treatment, the goal is stable disease. No change is good news. If you see some reduction in disease, that's even better. But in my case, it was a 1 in 1,000 result, a complete response. So, for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I stole my life back from NET. Aside from an MRI scan every 3 months and a gallium scan every 6 months, I was able to make plans, work on music, and travel. It wasn't until September 2018 that a few small spots showed up on the gallium scan. I had another gallium scan in March 2019, which showed progression. There didn't seem to be really any question at this point about how to treat, because I'd had such great results from PRRT previously, and it had been 3 years. By this time, PRRT had been FDA approved, so I had 2 cycles at UCLA last summer. UCLA Medical Center is only 2 miles from our house, so it was even better than going to Texas. Although there's not very good barbecue in our neighborhood. December last year, my gallium scan showed a partial response. Some spots disappeared, others were stable. I had an MRI last month and it showed no progression. I was supposed to have a gallium scan at the end of March, but it's been postponed until June. Currently, I'm just living my life. I don't have to think about NET every day. I'm working on music projects, and I'm looking forward to traveling again after the pandemic is over. Obviously, I'm a big fan of PRRT because I've gotten great results from it. But of course, that doesn't mean it's the right treatment for everyone. Like they say, your mileage may vary, but it definitely should be one of the options you consider if you have somatostatin positive NET. I'm happy to try to answer any specific questions you have about it. Meanwhile, everyone just stay safe and healthy.